Welcome to Retro Fanfic Retrospective, the podcast where we dredge up old fanfiction and expose it to the cold, harsh light of 2020. My name is Amato, and with me are...
Dory.
And Dom.
And today is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
We're recording on your birthday.
Yes. And I guess it's appropriate, because today I went probably the most self-indulgent I've gotten so far.
Yeah.
Extremely self-indulgent.
This was our present to you, Amato.
It turns out, yeah.
It was
You
Amato's
sacrificed
present
a
to
lot.
Amato.
It was a bad present to myself.
I thought you were going to say it was appropriate because this has put you that much closer to eventually dying.
It doesn't at all, though.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it does.
All of the fan fiction. Yeah, it's not fan fiction. It's a fan game, but there's some things to talk about. It's interesting. It is King's Quest ZZT, which is a game made in ZZT.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Am I the only one who played any ZZT as a kid?
You made me play some ZZT in high school, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I had no awareness of ZZT until very recently.
Did you do some research in the process of having to play a ZZT game or anything?
I kind of wish I had. I had, that kind of a fanzine book that you lent me.
That was by Boss Fight Games,
right.
Which is like a little bit more established than zines, but yeah, the Boss Fight Games ZZT book.
But that was my first understanding of ZZT at all. So
okay, well,
there
you know some of it then. ZZT is super interesting, mostly for two reasons. And one of which is that, like, it spawned a big community of people making fan games because it's just, like, thrown together based on a text editor game where it uses ASCII graphics. But it has a fairly robust world editor for the time. It was from 91, with its own programming language so you can do stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was thinking at the time going through the game that this was pretty unique use of very simple tools executed well.
yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of other better games also that, people made in ZZT and pushing ZZT's abilities to their limits. The other reason it's interesting is because it was made by Tim Sweeney as like one of the first things that Epic Mega Games did, which is later Epic Games. And so this is Tim Sweeney, who is still the CEO of Epic Games and behind things like the Unreal Engine and Fortnite.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me. I played this together with my brother because, it was more fun to have someone to play with. And he just, being, a computer programmer and someone who's really familiar with video games and game design kept saying that it was pretty bad game design.
Oh.
And I don't disagree.
It's bad game design.
Yes. And it was just interesting to me because in my mind, I wanted to make a lot of excuses for the languages and the platforms that were available at the time. But realistically, they could have done better. So I'm wondering kind of like how this came to be an interesting or popular thing.
Yeah, we'll get around to that.
Okay.
I guess just going straight into it, we try to be kind on the show. We try not to describe things as being like, oh, this is really bad. So let's just say that this is plus ungood, shall we? I'm not going to go as far as double plus ungood.
Oh, no. Not quite that far, no.
No.
Never.
But I think it's more than just ungood.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, we're all in agreement about the quality of this work.
Plus on good, yes.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I did a whole lot of ZZT as a kid. Like, I wasn't part of the community, I never posted a level. I did work on a world based on my stuffed animal, Mr. Bun, for some time. And the file is now long since lost. It was on like a floppy disk that degraded.
Right.
Never was able to find another working copy.
Now, was there a ZZT community?
Yes, there was.
Like, so people who were doing ZZT were kind of like all part of the same community, or in general?
They were in conversation. They formed groups. They had forums. It was all that. I mean, later on, earlier on, I feel like when I first encountered ZZT was on the AOL games section, and it's just like they were the only things that were free and like easy to download because they're each like 50 kilobytes, I don't know, something that you could actually download on AOL dial-up back in the day.
Before somebody calls your house and you have to do it over again.
That's right.
Yeah. And then in the process, for people like me who are not super familiar with game designer, programmer, anything, is ZZT quantified as like a platform to create games or a language, a programming language, or like how does it work?
It's a platform for creating games. There is
I
a
see.
programming language in it called ZZT OOP that you use to dictate the behavior of an object in the game. And an object is just anything that wasn't kind of hard coded into the game with its
I see.
behavior intact. And Tim Sweeney did not intend for people to use this engine to the extent that they did. It's kind of weird because this is actually a lot closer to the worlds that Tim Sweeney made than a lot of more interesting ZZT games are.
So ZZT is a game
This is
design
much more
engine.
straightforward. Yeah,
Well,
in
yeah.
a sense.
Okay.
Just from playing it, you can probably tell that like there's a whole lot of things hard coded into it that you just kind of have to roll with if you're trying to make a game in it.
Well, it came with a game or something, right?
It came with a world. The idea was it was shareware, and you would like order the other worlds that Tim Sweeney made.
Right.
But it also had a world editor.
So it's kind of like Neverwinter Nights sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where you,
Yeah.
You had a main
Sure.
campaign, then a robust editor that people
Right.
spent a lot of time on.
And just like Neverwinter Nights, there's a lot you can do with the programming, with like the editor. But there's
Yes.
also a lot that just this is how Neverwinter Nights works.
Right.
You cannot change this.
Right.
Now, I remembered several games that I played back in the day that were based on something. I remember playing this series of very strange Yoshi-based games and that sort of thing. So I was like, oh, it'd be cool to like go back and play one of those games that was, fan game, right? And I tried to pick a good one, but I feel like the reasons that King's Quest ZZT are remembered are not because it was good. It's more like on the... Well, for one thing, it's the first game created by Interactive Fantasies, which was a kind of really well-known ZZT, quote, company, unquote. Where a ZZT company is a bunch of ZZT world makers who came together and published under a label to make it kind of feel like it was something that was a big deal, even though it wasn't.
So it's like a club circle.
Just a club circle, yeah, publishing circle,
see.
whatever. And it was the first game that Interactive Fantasies did. They did some better games later.
Well, there was advertisements for different games in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. This is like the first one they programmed, apparently, but they didn't release it until a little bit later when they'd made a few other games.
There's a catalog of a few other
A
games.
catalog, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's so pretentious. I mean, I say that with fondness.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but I also thought it must be good because when I was poking around, like it's mentioned on the King's Quest wiki, and
Interesting.
the people behind the Silver Lining, which is the really good King's Quest fan game, that's like a fan sequel from like 2010. Like they make reference to the conflict between the centaurs and the ogres in some like peripheral little piece of fan fiction that they wrote on their blog. And so I was like, oh, if anybody remembers this, then probably there was something like memorable about it. And there are some things memorable about it. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
By the way, how much did you two have to grapple with just getting ZZT to work? Was it? I mean, it runs in DOSBox, but like, did you have any problems?
I had that web page that said how to set up DOSBox, and I set all my folder names to the same folders. They said it there, so I just copied their tutorial every time.
Yeah. No, I just ran it in the online emulator.
The online emulator didn't work for me. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah, I just had to do. But,
Oh.
but installing DOSBox is so trivial.
Yeah.
I
mean,
mentioned-
it just was easier. But
There was a time in my life where I kept our old, desktop computer in the garage because I was like, what if I want to run all those old DOS games that don't work properly on this, like, Windows 95 machine or whatever. And now our computers are so powerful that we can just run an instance of my old computer trivially using
I
a
know.
tiny, tiny fraction as like a little box inside, the computer.
You could probably run it on your watch if you wanted to.
Well, no, because my watch is really old.
Well, not on an actual person's watch.
Oh, yeah, probably. I wouldn't want to play
I-
ZZT on a watch, though.
No.
I don't have a watch. But anyway.
Anyway.
I would want to, like, okay, for me, and maybe this is just me, but I'm wondering if, whatever we want to do and say first, but can we talk about, like, our early experiences with King's Quest?
That's the next thing we
Like,
need to do.
Okay,
Yeah, King's Quest.
Just saying. I know this is kind of like a different thing for us to do doing a game, so
But
we've got
it's
a lot of things to talk
theoretically
about.
King's
but
Quest fan work.
It is,
so we need
yes.
to talk about King's Quest.
Yes.
Tell us about King's Quest.
I love King's Quest. Oh my god. I started playing, like, I haven't played 3, and this game is a direct sequel of 3. The ZZT is. But I started with 5, watching my dad play 5 when I was very small, like maybe 4 or 5 years old. watching him play all of these King's Quest games, up through, I think, 8 was the awful 3D one that wasn't done by Roberta Williams.
Mask
and
of
was
Eternity, yeah.
really bad. But anyway, I still played that one. And I love Torrens Passage. Like, that's probably maybe my favorite ever game. Like, the Sierra games done by Roberta Williams, I think, are brilliant. And I think King's Quest 7 with the Queen and the Princess and then Torrens Passage are probably my favorite all-time games. So it was kind of delightful to have someone like try to do a King's Quest flavor. I don't know if they did it very well.
Oh, I know.
But
They didn't.
They kind of did, like, I mean, we'll get into it. They kind of did a D&D thing, and that's fine. But I like the idea that someone liked King's Quest and they wanted to do it. Anyway, I guess you could say I'm a King's Quest mega fan, so... I kind of wish I had more opportunity to play 1, 2, 3, and 4, actually. I might go back and try.
I've definitely never played any of those early games, but I watched LPs of at least the first few, which I think you did too, Dom.
Yeah, I've watched LPs of the first 3 or so from Game Grumps and so on. And I've played part of one that I borrowed from you.
Probably 6.
That was the fairy tale one.
6 is the islands one with the fairy tales, yeah.
Tickets next.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, so you remember dying repeatedly. That's the King's Quest experience,
It's
yes.
King Quest.
Right.
Oh, that's the flavor of King's Quest. And there were certain points in this game where I felt like, oh, they said something about you dying, or it's like, it's inevitable you would die. But unfortunately, this game didn't make it inevitable that you would die. They just made it silly.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't have a cute quip every time you die in a different way,
that's
which is the
true.
most
I know.
important part of dying in King's Quest.
It really is. It's like, you should die many, many times, but there should always be a quip. And you should always be able to be like, I learned from my death, and now I won't do something so stupid. This game did an interesting thing where you had a choice to knock on the door of the ogres or break it down. And in my mind, I was like, well, breaking it down is going to make more noise than knocking on it, so we should try knocking on it. The game quipped, oh, well, that was stupid. You shouldn't have knocked on their door. And I was like, well, that's a good quip. Had you given me a better choice?
I think if I would have done this back in the day, my design document would have been first a list of ways to die, along with that program, along with those quips, and then the game built around that.
Would have been better for King's Quest flavor.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, King's Quest 6 was my jam, and like that's the first game I played, and first King's Quest game I played. But it was a really good game. It's definitely the first game I played that was fully voice acted, and the voice acting was pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
that was like one of the things about that game that was really impressive.
Totally.
But also got to been one of the earlier adventure games that I played. I really liked that game. It was hard for me to go back to 5 from that. We tried playing 5.
Sure.
It was tough.
It was weird for me having borrowed it from you that this was like the first game that had death and so much of it.
So much death.
So random and just cruel.
Yeah.
I do remember that we were trying to figure it out because my older sister Ashton and I played it together, and I was trying to figure it out, and it actually eventually like printed up the whole walkthrough, and it was like a big like 3-inch stack of paper in order to do everything right.
We definitely had to use some kind of early online walkthroughs, especially for the good ending.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
on like the internet?
Yeah.
You had the internet when you played King's Quest 6?
Yeah.
Wow.
At least AOL. I
You must
don't
have
remember.
played it
There was something.
late.
Yeah, I
we didn't-
definitely played it late because I played it after.
Yeah, we didn't have the internet in my home until like 1999 or 2000.
Let me think.
Um,
We had it before you did.
Oh.
We had Prodigy, then we had AOL, then we had something that
Okay.
wasn't AOL.
But yeah, we
for a
played
long
King's
time.
Quest in the early 90s, most of them. So yeah, we definitely played all the King's Quest games we could far before we had the internet. And Torrens Passage as well, which still I will say was my favorite. It's hard because, you're always being like, the King's Quest games, that's a saga, but it's like Torrens Passage is amazing.
I've never played
So,
Torrens Passage. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's a Sierra game by Roberta Williams.
Okay,
It's
that's probably really good.
basically King's Quest. It's just not a King's Quest game. It's incredible.
It's fine.
I love it.
The King's Quest world there's nothing special about it. It doesn't really matter.
Well, Torrens Passage doesn't take place in the King's Quest world.
That's
but
what I mean. It's like,
That's
fine.
Yeah, that's what's fantastic about Torrens Passage. I'm just gonna break it down because everyone needs to know. Takes place in a world where like Torrin is your main character,
And the Passage is your other character.
No,
No, it's a possession they have. It's Torrent's Passage.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
And
sword
Torrent
or
probably
something.
dies, which is also why it's called Torrent's Passage.
Oh, that's so sad.
I assume Torrent dies repeatedly, right? Because it's a
Well, yeah,
Roberta
definitely.
Williams adventure game.
I mean, it's basically a King's Quest game, but you're Torin, you're just like a nobody. You're not like a prince or king or a queen or a princess. But anyway, yeah, the whole thing is that you have to descend through the layers of the world to find your mother eventually. And there's like a lot of complicated emotional stuff. But literally, like, you're descending from the outside layer of this planet, like, down through the different levels, and they all have a different flavor. It's like an extremely well done game, especially for like, an early 90s game, and I highly recommend.
All right.
Speaking of, there's this game, which
Yeah.
is less good.
And speaking of being a prince or a king,
Yeah, when was this game put out?
that's a good question. ZZT came out in 91. I think it took a while for the community to get going because Interactive Fantasies was a staple for a while. But this game came out to October 97.
Oh.
It was made July 97.
So was that post King's Quest 7?
It was post King's Quest 7. The very first thing that
post
happens in
Torrent's
this is
Passage.
that, Valeria and what's her name came back and we're celebrating. But that doesn't make sense because Alexander is hanging around the palace and he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Well, no, this takes place post King's Quest 3, right?
Well, definitely, but it also takes place post King's Quest 7, right?
I
because
guess.
they're celebrating the Queen and Princess getting back. That's the first thing.
Oh, I didn't
7,
even pick up on that.
And 7 had come out at that time.
Yes, it had.
But anyway, you're controlling Prince Alexander. And as a King's Quest 6 fan, I'm like, yeah, Alexander.
Of
Not that
course,
it really
yeah.
matters that
Yeah.
you're controlling Alexander. But,
I mean, this seemed like it came out right after King's Quest 3, right? 'Cause-
No.
Oh, sorry.
It's 97.
You said it was 97, sorry.
Yeah, no.
But they
it's
were trying to
definitely-
make it a direct... I'm so confused.
It's mostly a sequel to 3, right? Because you're
Right.
Alexander, and what matters is the stuff that happened to Alexander in 3, like being
Right.
apprenticed to an evil wizard and escaping that, and turning that wizard into a cat, and what does not matter is what happened to Alexander in King's Quest 6, my favorite game, such as becoming the new prince
Right.
regent of a different country
But
across the world.
That
Yeah.
doesn't seem to have happened.
It's not referenced ever, so I guess not.
Yeah. And
Sorry,
you're
Princess.
right.
What's her name?
Cosima?
Cosima. Yeah, I think you're right.
Could be.
That could be. Yeah.
You're right that you were talking about the queen and the princess coming back, but I guess I didn't pick up on that. I kind of felt like it was supposed to be a direct 3 sequel because of all the references to 3.
I mean, maybe
But
it's a
you're
4
right.
sequel because you were
Yeah.
controlling Rosalie. It's been a while. Rosalina?
Roselia.
Rosalia.
Roselia? No, Rosella?
You're controlling Princess Peach.
What is her name? Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to
Queen
forget.
Daisy. Okay, whatever. So you are, Graham's son. Graham's the original protagonist thing. And the first thing is he's fallen sick and you've got to save him before you can go deal with another problem. It's all just kind of laid out right for you at the very beginning.
Yeah, first thing, Graham gets sick. Second thing, you get Graham's hat.
Yeah, that's what happens. It's essential. I mean, you actually have to do it. And so the thing is, it's very easy to describe the order of events in this game.
Well, 'cause
and that's one of the big problems.
Because I had good hopes going in, because the first thing that happens was they give you a little intro. Then you start the game. Graham's sick. They tell you need to go get it. You talk to Rosella, and you get Graham's hat. Then you look into a mirror, and you get points. I was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
That's the flavor.
I appreciate those times where the point system in King's Quest is just as useless as any other point system in a video game. But they did that in King's Quest too. You got points for doing everything or doing things the best way or whatever.
You got that chime. Then
Right.
some points went up. Yeah, I did it.
You did something good.
Yeah.
And so, I was expecting a lot more of that kind of thing where it's investigate, do some things, get points, even if it's not directly useful.
Yeah. So after that, I was bumping up against everything.
Yeah. Yes, in King's Quest, you have to move into things to interact with them almost all the time.
In ZZT.
Sorry, not King's Quest. In ZZT. In the ZZT engine.
In King's Quest, that's going to get you killed.
That's very true. But what I was saying is that it's easy to describe this game in order of the series of things that happens. And that's a problem. That's one of the main problems, is that there's only ever one thing that you need to do at a time in order. It's in a King's Quest game, usually you can poke around and pick up
Yes.
random stuff and make a little progress at a puzzle and get stuck and go wander off into another puzzle. And that's just not there in this game.
It's actually hilariously bad in
railroaded.
terms of game design, in terms of
Yeah.
that, because if you literally don't do what the designers intended you to do at any given moment, you will be completely stuck later on and
You
have
get
to
soft
start the
locked.
game
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
Like in almost every single turn. And that basically is, you have to approach the game with the logic of, if anyone offers you to do something, to trade with them, to do anything,
That is the thing
you
to do.
must do it right away or you will be screwed for the rest of the game. And that is just ridiculous. Like, that is really the worst game design I can imagine. It's like, especially in terms of a King's Quest game where you're supposed to explore. There's supposed to be danger, but you're supposed to explore the opportunities.
Progression bugs aside, there are actually a lot of games that are just as railroaded, but they do better because they do better environment, better stories, better interactions. Like, for example, you take Telltale's first season of Walking Dead. That story is a complete straight line, but it's still a good piece of storytelling and a good video game because of how the story goes, how it makes you feel, and how it unfolds.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
So just something being A, B, C isn't bad game design.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
No, that's actually a good point. And I do think we should backtrack because in terms of this, when you start the story, you're thinking King's Quest ZZT. So you're thinking this is going to be like a King's Quest game.
Yeah.
The first thing you do is you walk through a series, like before the game even starts, you have a series of rooms that explain different things to you. One is items and one is races. And there's halflings and gnomes and centaurs and ogres and humans and elves,
And red
basically.
dragons.
And a red dragon, which is in the enemies, yeah. And so you're basically being like, this is a D&D campaign. Like, King's Quest doesn't have those things.
King's Quest
This
would have
is a
gnomes. King's Quest could have centaurs.
It
King's Quest would not have
could,
halflings
but-
or D&D elves,
Yeah,
probably.
like it could have some fantasy creatures. That's fine, but this is like definitely a D&D campaign
Yeah.
when you have it all laid out in front of you. So when you get that flavor, I feel like you kind of get the idea. Oh, this isn't really King's Quest. This is more like some DM's campaign. And when you walk out there, I feel like that changes a lot of how you perceive it. So that helps you to understand where they're coming from. I don't think it rectifies a lot for me.
But it does feel like you're trying to make a King's Quest game with only D&D figurines.
Yes. And it's pretty silly because the random monsters you encounter, you can easily just walk around them. If you want to maximize points, you should shoot arrows at them.
It's actually really funny seeing someone use the built-in ZZT enemies like that, because like later game designers would not. This feels like it's at a threshold where people were really pushing the ZZT engine in some ways, but not really figuring out what they wanted to do with it. And I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time on the plot because it doesn't really matter. We can jump around the story. I saw a lot of this as a ZZT person who knows ZZT. There was a lot of this where they were doing things that were actually technically non-trivial, and possibly even impressive for the time. Like the RPG fight engine, just programming that in ZZT is a real pain.
Sure.
And they
good.
put a lot of effort into it. It's not good gameplay once you're done with it, but it's like you see the effort. There's all these other random things they do sometimes. Like at one point when you're traveling from one place to another, they have this like cutscene map. And I was like, oh, that was a cute thing to do with the engine. And they have other cutscenes as well, like the huge, ASCII ASCII, what do you call it, 8-bit dragon.
The dragon was
scene.
really cool looking.
So,
and I'm glad I made the choice to quit my save and go back and see what the dragon would offer me, because when you cross this boulder, you can't cross back over it. So I actually chose to quit the game to see what the dragon would do, knowing it would kill me, because the game tells you in the first part that it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see it, so...
But without a clever quip, again, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it seemed very much like the first game of some fairly ambitious ZZT game creators, where they were very focused on what can we do, rather than what should we do in this game.
Yeah, I feel like they were working on the back end a lot more than the presentation side.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of fun, like ASCII art, and like a lot of boards were well drawn and stuff.
Some of them. But then there were just like things where it's like, okay, so ZZT game design. You're stuck with the size of the screen. The screen's always going to be that size.
Yeah.
And so there's two things you can do with it if you're making a good ZZT game, right? You can either fill it up with a lot of interesting things, or you can make it smaller. You can like make a border and only have like if you're using passages rather than moving off the side of the board, especially, you have a lot of freedom. You can make it a smaller space than that if you don't have much to put in it.
Yeah.
And this game not only doesn't do either of those things, some of the time it leans into I'm just going to make you cross a full ZZT board to get to the next place, or even worse, I'm going to make you cross 3 of them, and like. It's just there to annoy you. Like
there's actually this part where you have to go through a long tunnel to get to the center of
That's
village.
what I'm thinking of.
Yes, and the author's there's an author's comment on each new screen, which is, "This is boring, right? This is taking so long. Haha, this is boring." And it's like I was like, I appreciate that flavor. Mm-hmm. If the other paths you went through weren't just equally as boring, just not as narrow. They're all just as boring. Walking through every screen is boring. And so, like, the author being like, haha, this is boring, I'm like, it's not more boring than anything else you've made me do.
Well, like walking back through the mountain passageway after you...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. They made you do that. I was like, surely they're just going to give me a shortcut. No.
Because like I refused to use a torch on this, too. So I was trying to fumble my way through blind.
Yeah.
Oh, I just did
I mean, once you kill all the monsters, you can go through it.
Yeah.
I just did the cheat code that I know about that you don't, because I'm used to ZZT, to remove the darkness.
Oh, I mean, that's fine. Actually, I know we haven't really decided like how we want to talk about this as a plot, but we're mostly talking about it as a game. Mm-hmm. And in terms of it being a game, the most fun I had as a game was when I had to light torches in the mountain passageway to see the enemies, to shoot them as I was going through the path, because there was actually an element of peril. It was like, oh yeah, there's like a bunch of enemies. I'm on a narrow path. I must shoot them in the right direction. And as soon as my torch runs out, I can't see them at all, and I have to light a new torch. That was the only time I felt like it was a game. Like, I felt like a sense of, like, stress. Like, I might die because this is a game that I'm not playing to the best of my ability.
Was that a common thing in ZZT, the torch mechanics?
That is one of the mechanics built into the game. It's there if you want to use it. Okay. And so some games use it, and a lot of games would never, ever touch such a thing. Because darkness is kind of annoying, and you have to account for it and account for torches if you're going to use it. So anyway, yes and no.
That was the only time I felt like it was a game, though. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it as a story, because
let's do that.
I was expecting there to be more King's Quest, fan playing around with it.
It's
for
really
the first part of the
not.
game, there's not much. But it actually made me really happy when, like, you reach a point later on where you're Alexander, and you're back at the cottage of the evil wizard who, enslaved you, like, as a servant in, King's Quest 3, which was the first game where you play as Alexander.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And, like, for one thing, I recognized it. It's like they recreated it in ASCII, and they did it in a few other places, like locations, but I care less about the castle or whatever.
Yeah.
You revisit a few areas that, in theory, you've been to in other games. But that's like, hey, that's the really annoying mountain pass that you have to carefully navigate through that I watched someone do in an LP. And what's more, yes, it will kill you if you take a wrong step, just like in King's Quest 3. And, like, it made me happy as a King's Quest fan thing to see that re-implemented. And then you get to the top and it's like, oh, there's the chicken coop. Like, yeah, that's the,
And the chickens are dead because no one's fed them.
Because you left.
Exactly. And then one of them has a key.
Yeah,
so,
well, whatever,
at least they're relevant. Well, but that's kind of part of it, though, is, like, you get that flavor, but then you also get your tool.
And so there's those moments of, like, it being a really cute fan work, like, fan game of re-implementing, returning. But then, of course, you run into the wizard. What's his name?
Menomina.
The wizard Menomina. And for one thing, it's like, oh yeah, I turned you into a cat. No explanation as to why he's back.
He's a man and a...
And for another thing, it would be interesting to see, like...
Mananan. You don't actually get to ever hear these names in King's Quest 3, so... Yeah.
Mananan.
Do.
But the other thing is that then you would expect something from, like, full-grown Alexander and this wizard, and some kind of, like, back and forth, or, like, conflict, or, like, needing to join forces, or trick him, or, I don't know, something. You get into a fight with him, and you stab him with a sword until he dies. That's what you do.
Technically, you hit him with a fireball and then a battle axe, if you really want to win the fight.
Where was the battle axe? I never picked that up.
Oh, you just buy it in the shop.
Oh, I just didn't check the shop.
That was another thing that's not great about this, is you just buy items. It's not a King's Questy thing.
You find the sword.
Yeah, you find the sword, that's one thing. But you don't, like, trade the sword for a bucket and then use the chicken with a pulley in it down a rope.
You really don't
and
do
then turn him into a cat.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of the sword, the first time you hear of a sword is you are literally a prince in a palace. You walk by like 13 decorative shields, and you see some guards also armed, and they say, "By the way, I heard someone left a sword in the desert. You should go look for that." And they don't say who. They don't say why. They don't say if the sword is special. There's like
They don't give you a
one
sword.
guy left. Yeah, they don't give you a sword. They say someone might have dropped a sword in the desert. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's the only sword in the world, and I have to go in the desert and get it. This is a common problem with the flavor of this game is there's none. It's like someone dropped a sword somewhere. You should find that. It's like that makes no fucking sense.
Okay, my headcanon is that they were out on exercise in the desert and dropped their sword, didn't realize it until they came back. Then they saw Prince Alex and thought, I bet they could get it for us. And that way we don't have to tell our superior we lost our weapons.
Great headcanon.
You should write a fanfic.
The flavor should be in the text. It would take so little effort to be like, this is somehow a special sword, and you must find it, and it was lost in the desert for like a special reason. Instead, it's just like, some guy left his sword somewhere. I guess you want that. Like, why would I want that? Why is it special? Why would you know if some random dude dropped a random sword in the desert? And why would I search the entire desert for some random dude's random sword? Okay, I'm done.
So I'd like to just like cut in here, apropos of nothing, as a ZZT fan, because I want you to understand a couple of things. First, as a ZZT fan, I want you to know that there's much better, more interesting, better written, better executed ZZT games. I also want you to understand there are infinitely worse ZZT games, any number of them. This is a bad game, but like there was effort put in, and it was kind of early in the game writing career. There's mitigating factors, and there is a game, and like there's obviously if you have a world creation engine, anyone can make anything and post anything.
Sure.
You got some real crap.
And this is one that had triggers that worked.
Yes, the game
sort
more or
of.
less works, even though I don't really get how you're supposed to do the
Honestly-
RPG fights as intended without spamming them. I don't know.
Are you supposed to spam? You
That's-
have to.
that's all I
Okay, you
did.
have to spam. Point being, though, like, this game only works if you know what the creator is intended for you to do.
Yeah.
And that is actually easy to know. Because
Because
if
it's-
anyone asks you to do
there's
anything...
anything you can do, you need to do it.
Yes, you need to do it. But the problem is that there are times when the author provides flavor. And those are in terms of, hey, would you like to trade your wings for some poison? I look shady. And you're like, yeah, like as a real human, I would not want to do that.
'Cause the wings
and
are
so
awesome.
you don't.
And
And then
also-
you're screwed.
And also as a
like, but
person-
you're supposed to do that. But there's no reason you would ever want to do that. It's like you should choose flavor. Don't put your flavor, your limited flavor, and your like relevant game choices together if that's gonna lead the player in the wrong direction. Is what I think.
But also as a King's Quest, pastiche, someone offering you something for poison, it seems like an obvious way to die.
Yeah, it sure does.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Or at least lock yourself out of the good ending.
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why I thought that's a bad idea. And actually, it's the only way to get through the game. And not only the only way to get through the game, but if you teleport to the last scene and you
Without having
haven't
done
done that, you're screwed.
Right.
You can't go back and you're screwed, which is what happened to me.
Yeah, you need to poison an army of 7 people.
Yeah. And you have, like, you can't walk into the barracks and, like, shoot fireball at them or do anything. You literally just have to put poison in their water supply, and that's your only option.
That's not an army. That's like
It's also 6 people,
not
yeah.
even not a battalion, I think.
But I've got to say, in King's Quest terms, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people, yeah.
You rarely
They-
see that many people in a King's Quest game in one place.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
at least specify it's like army of 6 super powerful soldiers. They say something about how they're
specify that?
super powerful. Yeah.
Okay.
Only after you poison them. But point being is that, like, why would I have poisoned them in the first place? Like, the only reason I needed to do that was from the walkthrough, and I had to walk all the way back to the game from the start once I'd flown there without poison. But there's no reason to trade your wings for poison from, like, a very shady dude that you just met.
Okay.
Like,
if you try to walk into the
you
barracks without poison,
Everyone knows.
if you try to walk into the barracks without poisoning, the door tells you to kill them somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
exactly. But
Well-
I'm like, I can cast like Cone of Cold and Fireball, like I could fight them. Like why?
All those
Why?
classic King's Quest spells.
I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah,
do
of
appreciate the
course.
through
I mean,
line
it's
that
D&D,
like
but-
Alexander can do a little magic, but usually what that means is Alexander is reading from a spell book and he can do that. Like that's how he
Yeah,
normally does
sort
it.
of, yeah.
Like and you know it's a ritual thing and like you need this and this and then you make a hole in the wall or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can harp on individual things well enough. There's not much else to say about the plot though. Like there's this thing with the centaurs and the ogres which I thought was going to be like interesting because the centaurs are like
Right.
the ogres like to eat us and then you have to go to the ogre village and I was like, oh, do we have to resolve this conflict somehow? No, I mean you have to kill an ogre, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the game just pretty much routes you in the direction of having to like fight things, even if it doesn't give you like a good or clear reason, but you do it.
I did like the little ASCII drawings of the centaurs.
I liked how they made the
Those
centaurs.
the centaurs were
It
pretty
was
good.
charming.
Actually, when I was talking to the centaurs, because they're about 3 bricks high on the, you know, the 3 pixels high or whatever, I kept going to the center of them. My brother was like, why are you talking to their chest and not their face? So then I made a habit of like walking all the way up to their face because your whole your sprite is also just a face. But the
Yeah.
centaurs have like a whole horse body and a face. So I made a habit of going up to their faces.
That's one of the things in ZZT, by the way, is that there's no way to make your character not be character 2 white on blue. That's the name of it.
Yeah.
Just this
Which is
weird
a little smiley face.
Weird little face that moves around the board.
Yeah.
Tori, you read the boss fight games, you know,
Yes.
book about ZZT, and one of the things it mentions is Alexis Johnson. What's her last name? Jansen. Alexis Jansen making this sequel to ZZT, spiritual sequel, because you know it didn't have the rights, called Megazooks. And Megazooks does like a lot of the things that you would expect from a sequel to ZZT from someone in the fan community. Like you can change you can even change the ASCII set. You don't have to use ASCII. It's all like on a grid in the same way, but you can like redraw things. You can change the size of boards. You can, you know, do all that sort of different things. You can change what shows up on the menu so it's not always ammo, torches, and gems, no matter what game you're doing. Anyway.
Speaking of, I do have a lot of admiration for like ZZT, actually having read that and like understanding the community too that must have gone into this, like creation of worlds and like fan communities that wanted to do their own things. It's almost like its own like microcosm of fan fiction, but just in a kind
Well,
of
it's
like
more like amateur writing group, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
using this medium, and everybody is using the same
Right.
medium, and they're making things with it. And some of those
It's
things
just-
are like really cool or at least impressive for
mean,
what
it's-
they're working with.
it is impressive to me. And this is like when my brother was saying this is like really bad game design, I totally agree. But like I kept being impressed by the fact that someone put so much effort
Yeah,
into
like I said, and the effort is
creating
clear.
this whole
And
story in this world. And nonetheless, I'm still confused whether this is supposed to be King's Quest fanfiction or D&D, but it kind of mixes itself up. But they really tried to create a whole story and a whole game here.
By the way, I never actually mentioned the authors, but this was by 2 people. Hydra, who did a lot of other games, including other fanfic games like Indiana Jones, and apparently Hydra's neighbor, Meebo, M-E-B-O, who did not do as much other stuff. Meebo's not a name I recognize so much from the King's Quest community like Hydra. Oh, they worked on a Quest for Glory game too. I mean, you know, ZZT. Quest for Glory was good too. Did you play Quest for Glory? Oh, it was another of the Quest series, like King's Quest. But,
Really?
Yeah.
Was it under Roberta Williams?
It was not done by Roberta Williams, but it was the same company. So it was Sierra.
Sierra.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Sierra games, but yeah,
Wait,
like
was it done by Roberta Williams? No.
she was basically their main game designer. Like,
The thing about Quest for Glory is that like it had combat.
Quest for Glory.
Like
Let
it
me
was
see.
more like this. Quest for Glory. I played a lot of Quest for Glory 3, I want to say. No. They were by other people with Sierra.
oh, interesting. I'm actually surprised that I never played those because you know Sierra games were so big in my household, but they were mostly the Roberta Williams games. So
Yeah, I mean they were good. I mean I played 3 a lot.
Yeah.
It was really good.
great. I'm gonna check this out. Big.
I think
Sierra
there's
fan, so-
remakes of some of them, or fan remakes, or something like that. Anyway, there's not a whole lot to say about King's Quest ZZT. It's
Well, it has a lot of problems.
Let's talk about those problems for a moment longer, other than the wing trading for poison thing,
Right.
and then we'll end on praise.
Okay. I'm not sure if we fully covered like the actual plot of it also either, but
There's nothing to say.
there's not much, right? It's like you have to save your father who's passed out, and then you go to a gnome and you get a potion, and the potion says, "Okay, it heals everything," or something, and then he's healed, and then you have to go fight.
You have
the
to wear the
cat.
hat so he knows that you're Graham's
Yeah.
son.
You're right. There's no plot.
Otherwise you
I'm
won't.
moving on.
So okay, so that's the problem. That is a fundamental problem. Is that the effort was put into reasonably impressive graphical and mechanical things instead of flavor, gameplay, or dialogue,
Yeah.
and that is a problem.
The gameplay was what I didn't like about it. It was more hack and slash, collect gold, buy weapons than it was King Quest.
But it's not even an engaging like cycle of that or
Not
anything.
even
No.
yeah, it wasn't even a thing. Like it wasn't even transformative as a work. It was just a bad work.
I didn't even buy anything in the game, so like
Yeah.
clearly that wasn't necessary.
Huh.
Are there any other complaints? I'm glad neither of you two are like we're like thrown off by the ZZT engine and appearance enough to like not be able to play
No.
the game or anything.
I have some
I mean, that's not a
muscle
problem to
memory
me.
back in the day.
Oh, my muscle memory is as soon as the game pops up, I'm KC, enter W, which is like keyboard, color, skip the introductory text
Yep,
box,
yeah.
open the worlds.
Yeah.
And like it's like one movement.
No, I actually think that the ZZT engine is pretty good. There's a little bit of lag with my keyboard. I don't know if that's common, but
I think it was just there's lag from the system.
yeah, I
a little
think
bit.
that's usually the case, and I didn't mind that honestly. That's not a big deal.
Might have been the web version also.
It might have been the web
Oh, yeah.
version. It really doesn't bother me either way. That's the only mechanical issue. The ZZT format, totally fine. My main issue, like I said, is that this doesn't feel like King's Quest. Like they tried. There were moments where they wanted to give you a little flavor, like you knocked on the orc store. That was a bad mistake, but they didn't give you a better option, so it felt silly. You ran into a dragon and died. That was actually my favorite part. It was like, why would you go to the dragon? The signpost literally told you not to go to the dragon. You died.
Let's think
But
just for
I
a
wish
moment.
they'd come up with something clever or witty. If there was just like
Yeah.
a moment of clever or witty, I would have been so much happier.
Let's think of a better witty death quip for knocking on the door of the ogre encampment.
Well, like my thought was if they'd given you an option to sneak in as opposed to batter down the door, because batter down the door is obviously going to make more sense than not.
Oh, I don't
like,
care about
make
dumb
more
deaths. I just want it to be a better
right?
quip.
Okay, so
Okay.
here's the basement.
Yeah.
Knock knock. Who's there? Ogre who? You're dead. That's the basement. We go up from there.
All right.
That's not bad.
Chill.
The style of death things is usually a bad pun. So something with ogre instead of over.
Yeah.
I guess you were a little ogre eager.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Or
You got it.
ogrely familiar with them.
Something in
Nah.
that vein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, those quips are awesome, but it bothered me more that seemed like the best choice you could make given the two choices.
Right.
I guess you
But-
were knocking on heaven's door.
Oh.
Oh, that hurts my
Also
heart.
good.
Knocking on Ogre's
All right.
door.
Now let's lavish praise upon this thing.
Okay.
But I already said all my praise, which is that the effort is clear. They put in a lot of effort. They were clearly like experimenting with what they could do and stretching their boundaries with what they were comfortable doing with the ZZT engine. And the things that they put the effort into are functional and like not badly done. It's just that like you put a whole lot of work into an RPG engine that really had no place being in this game and didn't benefit anything. Or like
Yeah.
you added this like detailed map thing, but I would rather have been able to talk to a few more people or whatever. Anyway, but no, the effort was clear, the enthusiasm was clear, and just kind of like that youthful amateur enthusiasm has some charm.
Yeah, and as far as praise goes, like, I liked that they made so many references to the King's Quest games. I like I said, I wish they had flavor of King's Quest games. I think they tried. I don't think they got all the way there,
'cause
but
it's
I think
nothing
their
but references
goal
most
was
of the time. It's like, here's this place.
right, but it doesn't have the flavor, But I think they had a goal, but they also want to do this D&D kind of like top-down DMing thing, and that's whatever. But I really admired that they created all of these areas and they wanted you to go to all of them and do things in a specific order. And they kind of, like I said, my favorite part was when you were going through the cave in the dark and you had to relight the torch and you had to shoot everybody. Because most other areas you could just avoid enemies. Those points where there was tension was good. And the point where you, like, I guess especially when you come to Menon's castle and you see him as a cat because you turned him into a cat. That was a great reference, right? And then you have to fight him as a cat, but he's still a powerful sorcerer. That's fucking hilarious. Also, the chickens being dead because you weren't there to take care of the chicken. Like, there were some.
I feel like all the best little bits are up there around the King's Quest 3 area.
Yeah, that's really what it was. But, like, there were some very good references, And there were some, like, fun, surprising points of the game, too. It's just, I wish mechanically it'd been a little tighter. There's a point when you go to the centaur village and it's like the centaur tells you that you can't do something until you talk to another centaur, but it doesn't actually work until you've done something later in the game. So, like, I kind of wish the game had directed you in the right path in the first place. But assuming you follow the path the creator intended, the game functions pretty well.
Playable.
So, it's playable, yeah. It works.
So I was a kid that, instead of paying attention, I spent most of my time programming my TI-83 in high school.
Mm-hmm.
TI-83 Plus, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So was already in the mindset of someone looking at a limited programming suite and trying to come up with something interesting. And I was looking at that with that game with those eyes, and I was actually really impressed with a lot of things that they did. Because they had very simple triggers they can use, very simple items, a set amount of objects and items they could use, and try to figure out. They had to figure out a way to reshuffle them and redisplay them. And I think they did some fun things. Like at one point, there was a bush that you pushed aside to find a passageway, and using the passageways to do things like you talk to the cleric, and the cleric starts to fight, and it moves aside, and you move to a passageway, and that starts the fight area.
Right.
And that was the area they set aside for the fight. What they actually did for that was questionable, but
I actually like that you got an opportunity to save before each boss fight, because they were like, move into this passageway or move into this before you start the fight.
That was a nice thing.
Gives you an opportunity to save. That was really good.
Yeah, the ZZT engine gives you no tools to make the player go somewhere. Like, you can't teleport them anywhere.
I could tell that.
So it's like, if you need them to go somewhere, you have to, like, make them go into the passage or whatever.
Yeah.
That was really good, though. Like, they utilized that super well.
And we mentioned it before, but they used a creative programming process that they had to make cutscenes, which was really fun. Where you went up and they kept you in a little box and you moved, and that triggered the cutscene, and they had this whole ASCII diorama basically play out, and then you watch it, then open the door and let you go to the passageway to the next scene.
Now, that was a pretty established ZZT thing, but I don't remember the timeline. This might have been relatively early usage of it. I'm pretty sure it was a very early RPG fight engine, and I think that's probably the most innovative thing here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that thing where restriction breeds creativity, right? And so it's always fun to see people getting around what they're not able to do and figure out what they can do.
It's also one of those, you talk about standing on the shoulders of giants from a technological standpoint. Send a person into the forest and see how long it takes for them to come back with a microchip. This is one of those things where if you were looking at that suite of tools at that time, would you have been able to come up with this solution? Because once you've seen that, then it's like, oh yeah, of course you can do that.
Right.
But just being able to figure it out whole cloth, because we did refer to them as authors.
Yeah.
But with authors, writing is an established art form that's been around for tens of thousands of years. You argue that certain styles have been invented and disappeared, and some are brand new.
I wonder how long writing has actually been around as writing fiction or writing narratives.
But with things like game programming, that was an art form that had spawned 5 years before. So everything had to be discovered whole cloth.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to watch that process.
Right. And so all I'm saying is that I don't know which things they got from someone else and which things they innovated, but I know there was innovation there.
Yeah.
And it is very cool. Yeah. And I think we can close this out then. Next week, Tori, I think you are not available. Is that right?
That is true.
We're taking the opportunity to talk about another, super popular franchise that's going to pull in all of the views, just like a lot of things we've done recently.
Yeah, we're crunching the numbers and look at the heuristics.
And I think Anne of Green Gables is what's going to, make us hit the big time.
It's the hot topic.
Right. I mean, there's that new TV show.
Anne with
There
an
is?
E on
Anne with an E,
Netflix.
yeah.
Yeah.
What? There's an Anne of Green Gables TV show?
Netflix.
There's been multiple Anne of Green Gables TV shows, but there's one.
No, like a recent one.
Yeah, there is.
No. Fascinating.
There's also some relatively recent, what was it? There was a fan sequel written, but kind of too recently. Then there was an anime based on that, and it's a prequel to Anne of Green Gables.
Anne of Green Gables is a lot more popular than I actually thought it
pretty
was.
popular.
So there you go.
Well, we're going to be reading
it's
an Anne of
popular,
Green
yeah.
Gables fanfic called A Little Romance. You can find a link there at bit.ly/RFR romance.
Is that a genfic?
It is not, and I'm very sorry to report that it is heterosexual romance between a canon couple. And at that point, I'm like, what's even the point of fan fiction?
Truth.
I'm sure you'll find something with the continuity to
complain
latch
about, or yeah. Well, I was looking for well-regarded things, and it's not like it's a fandom that has its own website, so I had to dig around on fanfiction.net. And this seems to have been a relatively well-regarded, well-commented fanfiction.net story. And I have a great track record with trying to find things that seem like they must have been well received on fanfiction.net and having them be good. I'm going in with low expectations, is what I'm saying.
Good to hear from the person choosing the fanfics.
Well, one of the key things of our format is I just do not pre-read things. Occasionally, it's things I've read before, but that's the most that I do. And I like to think that makes it more of an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to pick on bad works, but, if we knew that everything we read was going to be actually quality, then, wouldn't we just kind of take it all for granted?
No.
Well, I'm the kind of bright and cheery person where if I went into that situation, I'd be looking for a way to tear them all down.
There you go. So I'm making you appreciate the other works more by throwing in the occasional dud.
Makes it seem more real when you
Right.
find something good.
That will be episode 71 of Retro Fanfic Retrospective, if all goes as planned. As for this was King's Quest ZZT, a ZZT engine fan game of the King's Quest series, more or less, by Hydra and Meebo. You can find, published in 1996 is what I said, right? 7? I closed the website.
Need some help.
Published in the cold, harsh light of
1990 something.
1990-something.
In the neon light of 1997.
Neon light. Yeah, something like that. 97. Right. I'm going to provide the link to the online, DOSBox run version of it that Tori managed to get to work at bit.ly/RFR King. Just one king. The quest of a king.
I have to say, I know if the music was that bad in other versions, but I had to turn it off. It was very bleep bloop bad.
That's all you can do in ZZT.
Very bad noise.
Sorry, Your Majesty.
Did not like noise.
The voice acting was also way below par for a King's Quest. The intro song is The Weekly Fare off of the album Popey's Incredible Adventure by Komiku. The outro song is Run Against the Universe from the same album. You can find this album and other works by Komiku at loyaltyfreakmusic.com. You can find our website at retrofanficretrospective.podbean.com or bit.ly/retrofanfic. If you have questions, comments, or thoughts about the episode, or if you want to urge us to actually do a franchise that anybody, cares about in 2020, please contact us on Twitter at retrofanfic or send us an email at retrofanficretrospective@gmail.com. You can also contact us on, what have we got?
Twitter?
Twitter. I said Twitter.
Oh.
Reddit at Fanfic Retrospective. We've got our Facebook at Retrofanfic. And you can also leave comments or reviews on the podcast service that you use, whichever one that may be. You can probably leave comments there. We even got a comment on a YouTube video.
Oh, yeah.
For the first time.
That was super nice.
At first I was like, this comment is too generic. Is it from a bot? But it does not appear to have been from a bot. It appears to have been from an actual YouTube user who uses YouTube.
And now you have just insulted our fan who commented.
Well, I was suspicious because they called us wholesome.
Yeah, I'm.
We are not wholesome.
We're super wholesome. Are you kidding? Like,
No.
so much of fanfic discussion would be like, oh, look at this goofy, terrible thing, and we're like, seriously talking about
Well,
stuff mostly semi-seriously.
No, man,
We're reasonable and kind, but I don't know if that means we're
No, we're
wholesome.
rude, crude '90s kids.
Well, it was a comment on the
Xena episode.
Xena episode.
Yeah.
So like we had the all dogs are gay aside. That's pure and
Yeah.
wholesome, right?
Yeah,
Sounds wholesome to me.
I think that was a pretty wholesome episode, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were all like, oh, it's so great that this is such a like cuddly series.
It's just I feel like I associate wholesome not with like all dogs are gay. But all right. I'll be wholesome if you want me to be.
I'm sure. I'm Amato.
I'm Tori.
I'm Dom.
We're just three wholesome Earth life forms trying to be nice to each other. Should that have been trying to be wholesome to each other? Would that have been better?
It's up to you.
We'll never know.
Until next time, take care.
So, what was your high score?
I just,
Oh yeah, what was
Didn't
my
pay
highest
attention.
score?
Mine was 3,733.
Oh, I gotta look
I
it
could
up
load
now.
it up and check.
I gotta look it up.
Yeah, go check.
Oh no, it's on my computer. 3,474.
3,716.
3,733.
Whoa.
Oh,
You are the master of King's Quest ZZT.
yes, you are.
Cool.
Master and or mistress. What is the gender neutral word for that?
Region.
Commander. We can do another play sometime if we want.
What other play fan fiction are there?
The high school I was at was going to be putting it on. It's short. It's a play. It's based on the Odyssey, but like with a kind of refugee theme.
It's steampunk theme.
But yeah, the fun thing is it's only like half based on the Odyssey, but it says like based on the Odyssey or whatever, which makes it like you can't read it without thinking about the Odyssey. You're not going to like you read it in reference in conversation with the Odyssey.
Are we counting things based off the Odyssey as fan fiction?
Yeah, because the Odyssey is enough of a text, not like a set of texts.
Amato, is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou fan fiction?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because like the more it is a retelling directly, the less it feels like fan fiction to me. Like the more they take it in a different direction, the more it's. And I mean, I know like there's the setting thing, but
It's an AU Odyssey.
It's an AU Odyssey. Yeah, no, you're right.
That's very fan
That's correct.
fiction.
It is. I just have like AUs. I guess I should say the more it's a retelling, the less I'm personally interested in it. But that doesn't mean it's not fan fiction.
That makes sense.